Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving deep into a topic today that's really important for those of you prepping for the UPSC exams.
Oh, yeah. It comes up a lot.
We're going to be talking about denotified nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes in India.
DNTs, NTs, and SNTs for short.
Exactly. We've got a ton of research and articles here.
A whole stack of them.
And, understanding all of this is going to be so important for both the mains and the prelims.
Absolutely. And it's not just about, memorizing a bunch of facts and figures. It's about understanding the historical context, all of the challenges they face, and what can actually be done about it.
So let's go back in time a bit. Imagine just for a second being labeled a criminal simply because of who you are or, where you come from.
Your family.
Yeah, that was the reality for a lot of people in India.
Many communities.
Because of the Criminal Tribes Act of 1871.
Really a dark period.
Yeah.
In our history. This act, it basically criminalized entire communities just because of, their traditional jobs or because they had a nomadic lifestyle.
And even though it was abolished way back in 1952, its impact is still felt, even today.
Oh, absolutely. Generations later.
It's crazy how something like that can have such a lasting impact. But how does it actually affect these communities today?
Well, think about it this way. Many DNTs and NTs and SNTs, they've never actually been able to own land or, have a home that they own.
Because of that stigma.
Yeah, because of the stigma. They were kind of forced out to the margins, denied opportunities over and over again. And it's like this cycle of disadvantage that's really difficult to break free from.
Yeah, it's like the system was built to work against them.
In a way, yeah.
And get this, the IDATE Commission, which was set up to, identify and understand these communities, they found over 1,500 of them.
Over 1,500.
But over 250 are still unclassified.
Yeah, it's a problem. That means a good chunk of these communities, they don't fit neatly into those existing categories.
Like scheduled castes.
Scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, or other backward classes. And when that happens, when they don't have a category, it creates a whole bunch of issues. Yeah.
Issues for them?
Because it impacts their access to resources and benefits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Many people can't get those caste certificates that you need to access all those government programs.
Especially in 29 states.
Right. Especially in 29 states. Things like education, healthcare, social benefits.
UPSC students, this is something you need to know.
It comes up.
This could definitely be a mains question. Something like, discuss the challenges faced by unclassified DNT communities in accessing government welfare schemes. And you could talk about the history, the classification issues, and the impact on these communities.
And it goes beyond just classification. Even when there are programs, the implementation is often a mess.
Yeah, I was reading about the SEED scheme. What's going on there?
So the SEED scheme stands for the Scheme for Economic Empowerment of DNTs. And it's supposed to help with things like free coaching for exams.
Oh, it's helpful.
Health insurance, housing assistance, job support. On paper, it sounds great, but...
But in reality, it's been bogged down by delays. People just don't know about it, and it's hard to even figure out who qualifies. Imagine you're a bright student, you qualify for the SEED scheme's free coaching, but you can't access it because nobody's even told your village about it.
It's a shame.
It happens a lot.
It's like a solution that isn't actually reaching the people who need it most.
You got it.
And on top of that, there's this huge lack of representation when it comes to, leadership roles.
Yeah, it's a problem. DNT communities rarely have a seat at the table when decisions are being made.
Even the Union Government's Development and Welfare Board for DNTs, SNTs, and NTs.
We'll just call it the DWB-DNC.
Yeah, the DWB-DNC.
Yeah.
They don't even have a full-time chairperson.
It's true. And that means their concerns and perspectives are essentially being ignored.
Another potential UPSC question right there. Analyze the impact of underrepresentation on the socio-economic development of DNT communities. It's all connected, right? The historical injustices, the classification issues of problems with actually implementing solutions, and this lack of representation. It's a complicated web of challenges.
You hit the nail on the head. These issues are deeply intertwined, and if we really want to find solutions, we need to understand how they all fit together.
Speaking of solutions, the IDATE Commission we talked about earlier, why was that even set up and what did they suggest?
Right. So the IDATE Commission was formed back in 2014, and their job was basically to create a comprehensive list of all the DNTs, NTs, and SNTs across India.
A big task.
And then to come up with some solutions to the problems these communities are facing. It was a massive undertaking.
So what did they find?
Well, one of their big suggestions was to create a permanent commission with real power to address the issues these communities face. They wanted it to be a watchdog, always looking out for the rights and needs of D&T communities. They also thought that people who don't fit into those existing categories should be included in the OBC category so they can get those benefits.
Makes sense. So how did the government respond?
Instead of a permanent commission, they decided to create the DWBDNC.
The one without a chairperson?
Yeah. Their reasoning was that a permanent commission might clash with the ones that already exist for SCS, STs, and OBCs.
Interesting. So it seems like they're acknowledging the problem, but maybe they're hesitant to make big changes to the system. But before we get into potential solutions, we need to make sure everyone really understands who we're talking about.
Who these communities are.
When we say DNTs, NTs, and SNTs, can you break it down for us? Give us some historical context.
Absolutely. So Denotified Tribes refers to communities that were once labeled as criminal under that Criminal Tribes Act.
The one from 1871.
Right. And even though that act was abolished back in '52, the term DNTs, it's stuck around.
And it carries a lot of baggage.
It does.
What about nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes? How are they different?
So these communities have traditionally been defined by their mobile lifestyles.
Always on the move.
Nomadic tribes are constantly moving, and semi-nomadic tribes might move with the seasons. Think of communities like the Kanjar, the Nat, the Party, or the Sapara. Their traditional occupations as entertainers, artisans, or traders often meant that they had to travel from place to place.
It's amazing how diverse these communities are.
There are so many of them.
I read that there are over 150 denotified tribes and around 500 nomadic tribes, each with their own unique culture and challenges.
Each one is different.
And they're not just in one part of India, right?
Yeah, you find them all over the country. And it gets even more complex because while many of them are included in existing SCST or OBC categories, some of them are left out completely.
Which makes their situation even harder.
Oh, yeah, it does.
So we've talked a lot about the difficulties these communities face. But are there any efforts or programs right now that offer a bit of hope?
There are a few government schemes that are specifically designed to help. One is the Dr. Ambedkar Pre-Matric and Post-Matric Scholarship for DNTs, which helps with the costs of education.
And what about housing? We talked earlier about how many of these communities don't have land or homes.
Right. Well, that's where the Nanaji Deshmukh scheme comes in. It focuses on building hostels for DNT boys and girls who aren't classified as SC, ST, or OBC.
Okay, so there are some initiatives in place. But from what we've discussed, it seems like we need to do a lot more. What would you say are some of the most important steps we need to take moving forward? A kind of roadmap to help these communities?
Well, first things first, we got to speed up that classification process. For DNT communities that clearly belong in the existing SCST-OBC frameworks, we need to include them right away. And maybe we should issue caste certificates that recognize both their caste and their DNT status.
Yeah.
Something like SCDNT or STDNT, so we get a clearer picture of who they are and what they need.
I like that. It's about acknowledging all the different parts of their identity. What else needs to change?
That seed scheme needs a serious makeover. We got to do a better job of getting the word out, especially in those remote areas. And those eligibility criteria need to be simplified. Having NGOs actively involved could be a game changer here, connecting these communities to the support that's out there.
That makes a lot of sense.
And of course, we've been saying it for years, but we need a caste-based census.
You're right. We can't create effective policies if we don't have the data to understand the problem. What about representation? How can we make sure their voices are heard when decisions are being made?
We need to encourage and support people from these communities to take on leadership roles. Reserved positions in local government policymaking bodies and even within the DWBDNC itself could make a big difference.
It's about giving them the power to help themselves. Not just offering solutions, but giving them the tools to be part of the solution. And what about all that historical injustice? Is there a way to recognize the past and still move towards a better future?
That's where that permanent commission idea comes in. It's crucial to have a dedicated group with the authority to handle complaints, oversee how those schemes are working, and really fight for their rights. We should also think about setting up committees at the district level to deal with complaints on the ground so people have access to justice right where they live.
So it's a multi-pronged approach.
Right.
We need to address those immediate needs, fix the problems in the system, and work towards long-term empowerment. We've been talking about a few committees and schemes, but I know there's a long history of commissions and reports focused on these communities.
Oh yeah, tons of them.
Let's just touch on a few to give our listeners a taste and encourage them to do some research on their own. It's important to understand how this issue has been addressed over time.
Absolutely. So we've got the Criminal Tribes Inquiry Committee from way back in 1947.
Wow, it's a while ago.
It was set up in the United Provinces, what we now call Uttar Pradesh. Then there's the Ananthasayanam Iyengar Committee from 1949, which was a big reason why the Criminal Tribes Act was finally repealed. And we can't forget the Kaka Kalarkar Commission from 1953, which really set the stage for recognizing and addressing the needs of those socially and educationally backward classes.
Right. And then there's the Mandel Commission, which was huge,
Landmark Report.
from 1980. And that led to reservations for OBCs and government jobs and schools.
Change everything.
The National Commission to Review the Working of the Constitution, also known as the NCRWC, they highlighted the plight of DNTs in their 2002 report, acknowledging all the stigma and discrimination they face. And more recently, there's the Ranka Commission from 2008, which provided important data on just how many of these communities there are and where they're located across India.
Each of these reports adds to our understanding of the history, the policies, and the ongoing challenges for DNTs, NTs, and SNTs.
It's such a complex issue, and it's often overlooked. But it's so important to pay attention to it because it affects so many people. And for anyone studying for the UPSC exams, understanding these historical developments is absolutely crucial.
You got it. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more you know about these communities, the better prepared you'll be for those tough questions on the mains exam. And welcome back to our deep dive into the world of denotified nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes in India.
We've uncovered some really difficult truths about the injustices and challenges these communities face. But we're not here to just dwell on the problems. We want to explore potential solutions and give you guys the tools to really understand this, especially for those of you getting ready for the UPSC exams.
Absolutely. And if we're going to talk about solutions, we need to talk about data, accurate data. And that's why a caste-based census is so important.
Because without that data, it's like we're trying to solve a puzzle without even knowing how many pieces there are.
Exactly, or what the picture is supposed to look like. A caste-based census would give us that clear picture, the population size, where they're located, their social and economic conditions, and the specific needs of each community.
And that data would be so valuable for everyone involved.
Oh yeah, policymakers, researchers, NGOs on the ground, everyone. It would allow us to create targeted interventions policies that are based on facts and make sure resources are being used effectively. It would also help us to challenge those stereotypes and misconceptions that often surround these communities.
Speaking of stereotypes, our research mentions that DNTs, NTs, and SNTs, they still face a lot of discrimination and prejudice. Even though that Criminal Tribes Act was abolished years ago, how does that discrimination actually affect their daily lives?
It can affect everything. The stigma attached to these communities, it seeps into every aspect of their lives, from education to jobs, healthcare, even just being accepted by their neighbors. They might face discrimination from the police, from landlords, from potential employers. It's everywhere.
It's like an invisible wall holding them back no matter how talented or ambitious they are.
And that's why awareness is so important. We need to challenge those prejudices, educate people, and create a society that's truly inclusive where everyone has a chance to succeed.
And education is a big part of that. But if these communities are facing discrimination and they don't even have access to basic resources, how can we make sure their kids are getting a quality education?
That's where targeted programs and scholarships like the Dr. Ambedkar scheme come in. We need to build a support system that addresses their needs. Things like transportation to school language support for those who speak different dialects, and a learning environment where they feel welcomed and safe.
And what about going beyond school? Higher education. We talked about the SEED scheme and how it aims to help with coaching for those competitive exams. But how else can we support these students who want to pursue their academic dreams? This is the kind of question you might see on the UPSC mains exam, really digging into this issue.
Mentorship programs could be a game changer. Connect these students with people who've been in their shoes, who've achieved success. That kind of guidance and inspiration can make all the difference. And we need universities to be more inclusive places that celebrate diversity and offer real support for students from marginalized communities.
It's about making sure everyone has a fair chance to succeed, no matter where they come from. All this talk about empowerment makes me think about the incredible culture of these communities. Our sources mention that each tribe has its own unique traditions, languages, art forms. Why is it important to preserve and celebrate that diversity?
Think about India as this incredible tapestry woven from so many different cultures and traditions. DNTs, NTs, and SNTs, they're a vital part of that tapestry, and they make our national heritage so much richer.
It's about recognizing that our differences are what make us strong.
Exactly. And preserving their culture isn't just about the past. It's about making sure that their voices, their stories, their perspectives continue to shape us now and in the future.
This brings us to a really important question that every UPSC aspirant should think about: what role can civil servants play in ensuring fairness and social justice for these communities that have been marginalized for so long?
Civil servants are the backbone of our government, and they have a unique opportunity to impact these communities. They're the ones who connect the policies to the people who need them most.
So it's not just about passing that exam, it's about using your knowledge and your position to serve those who need it most.
Absolutely. By understanding the challenges, fighting for inclusive policies, and making sure those programs are actually working, civil servants can create real change. Empathy, sensitivity, and a commitment to social justice. Those are the qualities we need in our future leaders.
It's inspiring to think about the impact that dedicated and compassionate civil servants can have. And these issues we've been talking about, they're not just important for exams, they're fundamental to building a society that's fair and just for everyone.
That's right. The well-being of these communities, it's directly tied to the well-being of our nation.
So as we wrap up this part of our discussion, I want to encourage everyone to really think about what you've learned, to keep researching these issues, and to think critically about how you can contribute to a more inclusive and just society.
Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll take a closer look at some specific case studies and explore some of the innovative solutions that are being developed across India.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the world of denotified, nomadic, and semi-nomadic tribes in India.
We've covered a lot of ground, the history, the challenges, the potential solutions.
Now let's bring it all together.
Let's look at some real-world examples, some case studies that show us both the struggles and the successes of these communities.
And maybe spark some ideas for those UPSC essays.
Exactly. And we'll explore some innovative approaches, initiatives that are paving the way for a brighter future.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Let's begin with a story about resilience and the entrepreneurial spirit of the Agarias,
The Agarias.
a community of traditional salt pan workers in Gujarat.
I've heard of them. They've been producing salt for generations, right?
Exactly, using techniques that have been passed down for centuries.
It's amazing.
But in recent years, they've been facing a lot of challenges, climate change at time, market instability, lack of access to technology.
It must be tough to hold on to those traditional ways when the world around you is changing so quickly.
Absolutely. But you know what? Instead of giving up, they've embraced innovation.
Really?
With the help of NGOs and some government programs, they've started using things like solar-powered pumps and better packaging.
So they're combining tradition with modern solutions.
It's a smart move. And it's not only increased their productivity, but it's also helped them reach new markets and get better prices for their salt.
It's a real testament to their adaptability and their determination to thrive in a changing world.
Absolutely.
This is such a great example of how the right kind of support can empower these communities to overcome obstacles and become economically self-sufficient.
Yeah, and it reminds us that sometimes the best solutions blend the old with the new, traditional knowledge with modern advancements.
What other success stories have you come across?
Let's head over to Rajasthan, where there's a fantastic initiative focused on education for nomadic children.
Okay.
The Rajasthan government, they've partnered with some NGOs to create mobile schools.
Global schools.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
These schools travel with the communities, providing basic education, healthcare, and even vocational training.
So these kids don't have to miss out just because their families are constantly moving.
Exactly. It's about adapting the system to meet their needs instead of forcing them to fit into a system that doesn't work for them.
It's brilliant and aligns perfectly with the Right to Education Act. That idea that education should be available to everyone, regardless of their circumstances.
It's a great example of that.
These are just two examples, but they highlight something really important. Solutions often come from understanding the unique needs and strengths of each community.
It's not a one-size-fits-all situation we need to embrace diversity in both the challenges and the solutions.
See people as individuals and recognize the value that they bring.
Exactly.
This brings me to another question. What role can technology play in bridging the gap and empowering these communities?
Technology has the potential to be a game changer, especially in areas like education, healthcare, and economic development.
How so?
Well, imagine online learning platforms that offer courses in multiple languages and dialects, so even those in the most remote areas can access education.
Breaking down those barriers, opening up opportunities.
Exactly. And think about telemedicine connecting these communities with specialized doctors no matter where they are.
And e-commerce platforms that can give them a global marketplace for their traditional crafts and products.
Sharing their skills with the world.
It's incredible.
It is. But we have to make sure that technology is accessible and affordable, and that it's used in a way that respects their cultural values and traditions.
It's not about just throwing technology at the problem. It's about using it thoughtfully and inclusively. You got it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's circle back to our UPSC aspirants.
Our future leaders.
We've covered a lot of information. Any advice on how to synthesize all of this for the exams?
I would say focus on those key themes, those connections, the potential solutions,
The historical context.
the socioeconomic challenges, the policies, the role of different stakeholders.
And how all of this connects to broader ideas like social justice, inclusion, sustainable development.
Remember, the goal is not just to memorize a bunch of facts. It's about developing a deep understanding of these complex issues.
So keep researching, keep talking about these issues with each other, and let this knowledge guide you as you become the leaders of tomorrow.
And to everyone listening, remember this fight for social justice. It's something we all need to be a part of.
We need to amplify the voices of those who are often marginalized and work together to build a future where everyone has a chance to succeed.
That's the goal.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey,
We hope you learned something new.
and that you feel inspired to make a difference. Don't forget to subscribe and like our podcast for more deep dives into important topics.
Until next time, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep pushing for a better world for all of us.